Absentee voting starts now in another key battleground state, Michigan. Voters there can pick up those ballots in person, fill them out, and hand them in today if they want. NBC News Now correspondent Dasha is in Kent County, Michigan. It's a place we've been visiting pretty regularly as part of our County to County series. Dasha, looks pretty busy back there. A lot going on behind you. Take us through the process that's happening.
Yeah, a busy day here at the Byron Township Clerk's office. Now, look, if voters want to get their ballot in person today, their absentee ballot, this is the sample one I'm holding here, they can come by to their local clerk's office, pick one up. If they want to, they can even fill it out and hand it right back here. They can also fill out a ballot application if they want. They just need to bring their ID. But the big push today for clerks all across this county and the state is to get these mail-in ballots out to voters today. The first big batch is going out. There's a truck waiting outside right now, actually, to take these over to the mailing facility. And behind me here, there's this wonderful Henry Ford-style assembly line of election workers hustling to get these things put together for voters. And I'm going to give you a little peek inside the process here. I'll have these folks walk us through what they're doing. We'll start with Dakota. Dakota, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm taking the voter address label and matching the ballot number and the address label to the envelope as well as their application.
And Cheryl.
And I'm taking the ballot and matching the number to the envelope.
Teresa.
I'm triple checking that the number on the ballot matches the number on the envelope, and then including the instructions inside the security sleeve.
And Peggy, who is our wonderful clerk here.
Well, I am going to put the secrecy sleeve that's holding the ballot into the envelope and also verifying that the numbers all match with everything.
And Sharon.
And I'm taking the ballot, putting it in the outside envelope and passing it on.
And Jay.
I am just taking a look and making sure that the mailing address is facing out correctly in the window, and then just taking one last look at the numbers to verify that everything's correct. Then sealing it and putting it in the containers.
And Allison, all those get stacked up here. There's about 4,000 ballots here that are headed off to the mailing facility in just the next 10, 15 minutes or so.
Dasha, I know those guys are working really hard and moving as quickly as possible, but wow, what a process just to get a single ballot together to be sent out. I know no excuse absentee voting is new to Michigan. What kind of challenges is that bringing?
I mean, as you can see, the volume, the sheer volume is a challenge in and of itself. Yeah. This is totally unprecedented. And you saw how manual this process is. There are no machines involved here. It is all people. But on top of that, because no reason absentee voting is still new to Michigan, there are a lot of inexperienced absentee voters that are making a lot of calls, sending a lot of emails to clerks' offices across the county and across the state, asking a lot of questions. And here's a little bit of what we heard from Peggy here, who is the clerk at the Byron Township, about what she's hearing from voters. Take a listen.
When they heard ballots were here, then their people are asking when is their ballot going out, and they're trying to remember if they even requested a ballot. So we're looking at those. Yep, you did request a ballot. You're all set. You'll be fine. Your ballot's going out. So it's more just maintenance right now, I would say. So there's a lot of things that people don't understand, and every time we go through it, we try to say, now tell your neighbors, tell your friends, explain this to them so that they'll know what's going on.
And Allison, we actually have a gentleman here from the mailing facility right now picking up these ballots. So on top of the volume, these clerks are also taking a lot of calls. So it just means a whole lot more work. They're recruiting friends, parents, family members to try and help out with this the manual labor that goes into this whole process. Allison.
Dasha, President Trump called mail-in voting a, quote, horror show this morning. What are election officials there doing to make sure that is not the case? I mean, it sure seems like folks there are being pretty careful, and there are a lot of eyes on every ballot.
Yeah, exactly, Allison. It's actually really tough for these election workers to hear things like that because it means they're getting more calls from voters who are concerned about the safety and security of the process. And as you saw when we walked through this process here, there are multiple, like 3 or 4 parts of this process where they are triple checking, looking at the numbers, making sure everything matches. The diligence and the organization is incredibly impressive, and they're very proud of that. And it does mean that the process takes a little while. So it might mean we need some patience, particularly when it comes to November. But what I'm hearing from clerks across the county here is that they are not going to sacrifice safety and security for speed. Allison.
All right, Dasha, thanks so much. And thanks to everyone there. We were also impressed. You know everybody's name. I couldn't remember them all. I did remember Jay at the end, but our thanks to them for letting us come and see how this all works today.
Well, these folks are all rock stars. And one last thing I should mention, Allison, actually behind them when it comes to safety, there's a bunch of hand sanitizer, there's PPE. They're getting that ready for in-person voting on Election Day as well. So they're thinking about safety and security for in-person voting on top of what they're doing with absentee.
Seems like they are doing the best they can to take all the precautions. Dasha, great to see you guys. Thank you. Be sure you know how to vote in the 2020 presidential election. NBC News can help. We have a state-by-state guide that's called Plan Your Vote. It has information on voting rules, deadlines, restrictions, all by state. You can check it out at nbcnews.com/planyourvote. Florida shipping out its first batch of mail-in ballots. The Sunshine State could very well decide this election, and officials say they've gotten requests for nearly 5 million ballots. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders joining me now from Lauderhill, Florida. Carrie, what is the process there for prepping and sending out all of these ballots?
Well, it's really been a rather dramatic day here and in the 67 counties where those mail-in ballots have been shipped out. Here, they had 3 semi-trucks arrive to pick up the mail-in ballots, the ones that were going out to voters. There was a parade of those trucks led and followed by the Florida Highway Patrol to protect them as they're heading to the sort center for the Postal Service. The process is somewhat streamlined. Voters can go online and say they would like to vote absentee, mail-in. It's the same thing in the state of Florida. Then that ballot arrives at your home, you fill it out, you drop it back in the mail, but on the outside of the envelope, you do your signature. And when that envelope arrives back here, for instance, it would then be opened. They'll match the signatures. They take out the ballot, and they actually run it through the machine. The counting begins as soon as the envelope arrives, but nobody knows the tally until the election's closed. The election actually closes on Election Day, but they're moving along with the process. So on election night, unlike other states, they don't just begin opening envelopes and starting to deal with the cumbersome nature of that. They've got most of that sorted out. The real question is, do voters send them in after they get them? A lot of times people request them, they let them sit there, they don't fill it out, or they send it in too late. Got to remember, the Postal Service doesn't necessarily deliver it overnight. So both parties are encouraging people to vote right away as soon as they get these ballots in the mail. And if you're curious about the breakdown of who has requested ballots, because we have that information in Florida of the about 5 million that have been requested, we have 31% who've been requested by Republicans, 46% requested by Democrats, and then you have 22.1% requested by either no party affiliation at all or one of those minor parties. And of course, the Republicans and Democrats are looking at that because they tend to feel that Republicans will vote for Trump, Democrats will vote for Biden. It's that other group, that 22%, that may make the decision in a state which is neck and neck here. Florida, very much a purple state, Allison.
Absolutely, Carrie. The president keeps saying without evidence that mail-in ballots lead to voter fraud. But on Twitter today, he's actually encouraging people in Florida to request a mail-in ballot. How are election officials dealing with that? All of those requests, and what are they saying about the potential for voter fraud and what they're doing to make sure that that is not an issue this election?
Well, you got to remember, you got to roll back the clock here to 2000 when Florida was a mess. But after that mess, there has been 20 years of progress. And so where the officials believe they are now is that if you were to mail in a ballot and try to show up the day of or even early election where you go to a precinct, that the computer catches it and you can't do both. So the idea of, and we heard the president talk about this earlier, about go ahead and test the systems across the country, do a mail-in ballot and show up and vote. Not only is it a felony in the state of Florida to do that, but the system itself is designed to prevent that from happening. So potentially, the system works. And if the system works, you can't do a double vote.
Carrie, this election now just 40 days away. Are voters there concerned about mail-in voter fraud as Election Day inches closer? What are you hearing from them?
Well, it's interesting. There is a growing interest in mail-in voting because of coronavirus. And of course, one of the concerns that both parties have, but especially the Democratic Party has, is that on Election Day, people will show up at the polls not wearing a mask. And the counties have decided that they can't enforce necessarily mask rules and prevent people from lining up. And so the fear among the Democratic Party is that Republicans, those who are real Trumpers and don't believe in wearing masks, will show up and intimidate those in line who are standing there with their masks on, who then might feel a little bit antsy or uncomfortable because of the maskless voters. And so there's a little bit back and forth. We had a chance to speak to both Republicans and Democrats about the overall sense of the election and how they feel about the mail-in ballot. This is what they had to say.
The vote-by-mail system and the optical scanners are a terrific way to vote. I really do. I think that the only concern I have is that voters really need to be aware of how to vote the vote-by-mail ballots, and that instead of living by fear that perhaps their ballots won't be timely returned or returned at all because of the post office, or that there's this allegation of fraud that is completely made up of whole cloth, has never happened, that voting in Florida is unsafe and unreliable. And that's just not the case.
Absolutely, we can trust the system when it comes to mail-in ballot. And I know that there has been a message sent through the media that the president is trying to get individuals to not vote by mail-in because there is quote-unquote fraud. And I hate to use this term, but the truth is that's fake news.
Of course, the president is the one who had indeed said just that about send it in, the mail ballot, and let's see, and then vote and see what happens. So fake news all in the eye of the beholder, apparently, in this particular case. One of the things that I think is interesting is we may see a record number of mail-in votes in the state. Right now, as it stands, 38% of all registered voters in Florida have already requested mail-in ballots. So Election Day, we may not even see long lines. We'll see how that works out. Allison?
We'll stay tuned to find out. Carrie Sanders, thank you so much.
Sure.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.